All right, we're live. Active day continues. We got a signing, we got a pro day, and now we got a report that Bryce Young's getting that CJ Stroud treatment. It is the locker room number one source for daily Texans digital content. I'm your host, Landry Locker. Get the comments in. We'll pile them up. We're going to get into a lot of things. People already asking, are we getting Bryce? I think so, but the Panthers are definitely, if they're lying very well. Maybe they're actually looking into everything. And joining me now, it is Cole Thompson. Cole, how you doing, my friend?
Long day, fun day. You have everything from Laramie Tunsil to Denzel Perryman signing to watching literally every throw from CJ Stroud and then nearly having a heart attack when you hear about Bryce Young fans now knowing that David Tepper's whining and dining the likes of Alabama's Bryce Young down in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, what are you thinking about that? What do you think? I mean, I feel like they know who they want, but I mean, when you're doing stuff like this, it is, I mean, if you're trying to make people think that you're thinking about it, then you're doing a pretty good job when you're already out to dinner, 6-7 hours after you saw Josh McCown hugging Bryce Young like they were best friends.
It's interesting. I think that the most thing is that you got to go through the dialect of getting a franchise quarterback. I mean, this is an organization that brings in a brand new head coach that's known for his background with quarterbacks from Philadelphia, whether that be Carson Wentz to even you bring in Matt Ryan, you bring in Phillip Rivers, Jacoby Brissett, and what he did in Indianapolis. So they got to get younger at the position. I think the other thing that you got to look at is the fact that they have to meet with every single quarterback. There could be things that Frank Reich really likes and say Will Levis that maybe David Tepper doesn't like. And there could be things that Anthony Richardson provides for David Tepper that Thomas Brown doesn't agree with, or that new quarterbacks coach Josh McCown really thinks will work with Bryce Young. But it just feels like a process to where everyone that I spoke to in Carolina, everyone that I spoke to around the league, was that they just want to move up to go get their guy. And that could be one of the four, whoever it is, but they have to do due diligence. And they could very well feel comfortable taking Bryce at number one. They could feel very comfortable taking CJ at number one. They could be doing due diligence to make sure that they're going to convince somebody, hey, trade up with us and let's stay inside the top four. Hello, Houston. Hello, Indianapolis. Make sure that you're at least in the conversation. So I don't think it's a necessary thing. But for Houston fans, I've also been the proponent, no reason to trade up, no reason to move. I've always liked the film of CJ Stroud. I think that he's a phenomenal passer. And I went back and I watched this film today. He was 44 of 51 passing, I think, according to Jonathan Alexander from the Houston Chronicle. There was also 3 of those passes that were dropped. So really only 2 inaccurate throws throughout the day, and they were everywhere from 12-yard slants to 50-yard bombs downfield to 25-yard out routes. So you got to like that there's a smoothness, a quickness, a great decision-making skill if you're Houston. But at the same time, if Bryce Young falls to you, it's basically one of the more one of the more well-known secrets of the NFL. Houston likes Bryce Young. You have an Alabama alum and D'Amico Ryans as your head coach. You have the connection with Bill Belichick and Nick Caserio being Patriot way with Alabama, Nick Saban. So either way, I think that you're walking in with a capable quarterback, a day one starter, an upgrade over what you had last year. And you brought in a veteran in Case Keenum who might at least be able to show the ropes in terms of here's what you want to do, here's what you not want to do. Just make sure that you get through the basic process and you'll be able to figure things out pretty quickly. So Houston fans are very similar to what I said when it was the D'Amico Ryans, Jonathan Gannon thing. I thought both were good candidates, even though you had one that you liked a little bit more. Just because you don't land one doesn't mean it's going to be the end of the world. And I don't think that Carolina at the end of the day is going to move. I think they're going to take CJ Stroud, which automatically leads right down Broadway for Houston to go get Bryce Young.
Bryce is the guy though, right? Like
Bryce
is the right answer, right? I mean, you watch all this stuff. Like I'm a Bryce guy. Make no bones about it. I'm a Bryce guy. That's the right guy, right? I mean, at least in your opinion.
That'd be my guy. I mean, here's the conversation, dude. If he's 6'2", he's going number one. Like there's no correlation.
I don't even think they're having dinner with anyone else. If that's
why would they? I mean, because of everything is there.
Honestly, I think the Texans do everything in their power. Like Cooks is inactive the final week of the season. They do everything they can to lose that game.
Right. But again, you have that conversation of people who are going to overanalyze. And we went through this a few years ago with Justin Herbert. I was all in on Herbert being QB2. I thought that he was just as talented as Joe Burrow. I thought that he had just as much precision and accuracy and a lot of touch and a lot of the things that you look for in a franchise quarterback. But everyone said, oh, he went back for a year and his numbers diminished, so he's not at the same level as Burrow. He's not at the same level as Tua. And that fell into the lap at Los Angeles at number 6 because people overanalyzed it. You don't need to overanalyze Bryce Young. Everything about him screams franchise quarterback, from footwork to precision to pocket awareness to touch on the football to accuracy. And I think the biggest thing is that also you got to look at what happened this past year, because we can just go back and turn on the tape from 2021. Yeah, you have John Mechie in the slot. You have Slade Bolden. You have Jaquil Billingsley. You have Cameron Lautu. You have Jameson Williams going over the top and just making plays left and right. But you lose all that this year, besides Cameron Lautu, and you also lose Evan Neal at left tackle. And the numbers don't diminish, and the production still stays high. He still leads his team to a 10-2 record. And in both games, really, he's not the problem in losses to LSU and Tennessee. There's no flaws in it. And he balls out against Big 12 winner Kansas State. So everything that you see from Bryce Young in the last 2 years screams franchise quarterback. But you're going to have those people who say, oh, a $198's not going to last behind the offensive line. You're going to say that 5'10" is going to get him killed. But part of the thing that you've noticed, Houston locked up a franchise left tackle in Laramie Tunsil. They traded for an amazing pass pro guard in Shaq Mason. They addressed the offensive line last year with Kenyon Green. They're looking to probably go ahead and have conversations about Titus Howard. It's not the same offensive line. So it's a better unit automatically for a smaller quarterback. The weapons are going to be upgraded, and they're going to work for a Bobby Slowick offense, which I think is really beneficial because you need those blockers. They got 2 blocking type receivers in Robert Woods and Noah Brown. And there are receivers in this year's draft where you can go ahead and replace the production, at least on paper, with the likes of Brandon Cooks. And nobody knows what you have with a guy in John Mechie still. And that's probably the biggest selling point here. And the chemistry that you see with these young receivers, especially when they get hooked up with their former quarterbacks, has been phenomenal. I mean, we can just talk about Joe Burrow, Chase, but we can talk about Devonta Smith and Jalen Hurts. I mean, it's the same thing. And it's the same thing with Tua and Waddle. Like, when you have that chemistry, it makes it easier. And the weaponry's been more improved, and you're getting better in pass pro. So it's not like you're going into a death trap if you're Bryce Young at 5'10", a $198 wet. It's like you actually have good weaponry, or decent weaponry compared to the last few years, and better protection up front. I don't know why anyone's going to overanalyze Bryce Young. He's 6'2". He's going number 1, and Houston is either losing out to make sure they get him, or they're trading up into number 1 to go get him. Like, that's probably what's going to happen.
You mentioned the extra year for Herbert. Now, a lot of people weren't impressed by it. I'm not an Anthony Richardson guy. It's a two guy conversation for me. I actually think Anthony Richardson I think he should have gone back to school. I don't think you can understate just the experience of the final year. Josh Allen struggled at Wyoming. He almost came out a year earlier. Wasn't great, but he credits that year for his development. I don't think Joe Burrow is Joe Burrow without his final year. I don't think Jalen Hurts is Jalen Hurts without going to Oklahoma.
He's not. He's 100% not.
Yeah, I mean, that's a 70% completion rate, Heisman runner-up, and he developed as a passer like nothing, like something we hadn't seen, despite the questions leading up to the draft and whatnot. I just don't think Anthony Richardson, like, if we're talking about this potential, I don't think that he can reach that. I don't know that he would be able to regardless, but I just think that an extra year of college would have at least made it possible. At this point, I think it's damn near impossible.
My big thing is that I was really high on Anthony Richardson at the start of the year. I mean, he
won the week 1 Heisman. Yeah. I call it the Denard Robinson. He won the week 1 Heisman.
But dude, I was high on him in July. Like, I remember watching his tape in very limited reps when he was at Florida going up against Emory Jones. And I'm like, what the hell is Dan Mullen doing? Like, everyone's talking about Dan Mullen getting fired for not playing Dameon Pierce. You had Kadarius Toney at one point. You had Anthony Richardson at one point. You had Dameon Pierce at one point. You had a countless plethora of weapons at one point. And you don't utilize him properly.
In fairness, AR did get hurt a few times, though. Like, he did hurt himself dancing, and he had the hamstring issue and all that. But Dan Mullen was a dope, though, for sure.
But still, I mean, it was done by Mullen to not play your best players.
I think COVID broke Dan Mullen. I think COVID, honestly broke Dan Mullen.
I mean, that of recruiting in Gainesville. I mean, the level just of commitment you have to be up there in the SEC, and then to make the comment of, oh, we'll worry about recruiting later. Bro, that's immediate sideline, get out of there. Yeah. But
you got to worry about that when you're sleeping.
It's Houston. And the problem with Houston is brand new regime, brand new offensive coordinator. And you can't just rely on the upskill and uptick of what the potential is. Like, part of the reason why Buffalo was so aggressive to go get Josh Allen was because they knew that if they had 2 or 3 years with a coaching staff, a new GM to really develop this player, they would be able to benefit from it. And what did they do? Year 1, they sucked ass. They were terrible. And so was Josh Allen. Year 2, they bring in a guy by the likes of Brian Dable, who really says, hey, knock out all the BS that is terrible. Let's worry about the positives. And then year 3, they brought in a new wide receiver and a shiny toy in Stephon Diggs, and they made it to the AFC Championship game. And you're kind of seeing that right now with Chicago, where last year they stuck with, the first year they sucked with Justin Fields. Last year, Fields improved a little bit as a passer, but he really improved as a dynamic runner. And now they're bringing in a premium wide receiver and DJ Moore, and they're saying, hey, we got your weapon. We got you better play. We're going to build an offensive line around you. It's time to improve. It's time to show that you belong. Houston can't do that because of your Nick Caserio, who the last 2 years has had a combined 7 wins. You did make moves in free agency, but you made moves because of you finally had the money to do so. And you also have to realize that there's some bit of stability of what you need at the quarterback position. I don't think Houston is going to be a contender this year by any means. I know there's people out there that are screaming, oh, they can get to 9 wins. They can get 10 wins. No, I think that if everything hits, 7 wins is probably right now exactly what you're looking for. But 7 wins with Bryce Young or 7 wins with CJ Stroud is a sign in the right direction. And people are going to go ahead and say, well, they're boring prospects. Boring keeps you employed, man. Like, sometimes taking the right pick is the reason why you get to stay successful. Like, Tom Telesco swings and misses all the time in free agency and at head coaches, but he hits in the draft. And like, part of the reason why he stays employed with the Chargers is because of he crushes the draft every year and he makes the right call. So you got to be able to go ahead and get the right quarterback in the building. And I don't think you can bet just on the likes of upside and potential of what Anthony Richardson brings, because that comes with development. And I don't think that right now, with the development of what you have, you're going to be able just to bank on that, especially when you're a GM in Nick Caserio, who at some point is going to be facing the pressure of, listen, you swung and missed with 2 coaches. You haven't made enough moves in free agency. We got to go ahead and get something stable in here for the long run. So it just makes it that much easier of a decision. I would be fine taking an Anthony Richardson if you weren't picking at number 1, if number 2, and you also had stability.
I would not.
But you can if you're Nick Caserio. Like, that's the whole point, is that Nick can't do it.
I would not do it if I were anybody. Like, I would not do that. I am not as big on him as you. I liked him in college. I liked what he, but then man, I would freak out. I also don't know, like the other thing that you said, I don't know that they missed that bad on Lovey. I actually think for the situation, Lovey wasn't awful. If you're going to have 75
for the situation,
I actually was okay with Coley and Lovey, just given the fact you had to get through the mud. I was actually okay with it.
I didn't mind the Lovey thing. Because it was that or Josh McCown. Like, that's what it came down to. And it's like, okay.
I was a McCown guy, so we'll ignore that.
but still.
He's a pretty important piece right now, it does seem, but yeah.
Well, right now he's telling everybody, hey, see you in Charlotte, CJ. So, either he's basically saying, hey, come trade up Indianapolis to number 1, or we're going to go ahead and just take it right here. Like, that's basically what they're doing.
See, I think they're looking at the Texans, if anything. I feel like they know their guy. Like, I know they're doing this, but I feel like they know their guy. I feel like they're trying to get like an extra 3rd or something like that from the Texans, because I just don't see why you trade up. Like, if you're going to trade up that far and then trade to 4, that just seems a little crazy to me. But I don't know. And does Frank Reich want to do Indianapolis any favors at this point? Like, they did kind of.
They showed him the door because if they wouldn't let him draft a quarterback. They said, here, take a bunch of veterans and has-beens and make it work. Go ahead. Like, that was the case.
And he also loved Carson Wentz. So there was.
And the worst part is that they played him 77% of snaps, and all you needed was to be under 75, and you would have kept it to be a 2nd-round pick. So that was a 1st-round pick that was gone with you too. And you missed the playoffs.
Just a disaster. Just an absolute disaster. So we have right now, I have 6 questions, Cole Thompson questions. We'll get to those in a sec, but I want to kind of talk about something that I think it's been valid for a while. I want to put out a video about it tomorrow. Criticism of the Texans. Like, I don't think the Texans deserve the benefit of the doubt recently. I mean, I think they would tell you that. The way that they functioned as an organization, specifically with Jack and Bill, was embarrassing, quite frankly. It was probably the worst duo in NFL history. And when you do that, you don't get the benefit of the doubt, no matter what. So I get it. It's kind of like the Houston Astros. Like the Houston Astros have earned the benefit of the doubt, and they could have done something as silly as hire Brad Ausmus as general manager, and some people would have acted like that was okay. Or like Jose Altuve is going to miss a third of the season, no big deal. I do, though, think at some point it's getting a little bit silly when there's a small amount. I don't want to say there's a large amount. I don't want to have like an extreme straw man. But how could anyone, and maybe you do, and that would be a good thing to cuss and discuss. Maybe you have an issue with it. How could anyone have an issue with the first 10 days of free agency and what Nick Caserio has done? I just don't understand that. I don't understand how. Maybe people are just trained to do it, but what would people want him to do different? I had McClain come in the other day, and he's hooting and hollering. I'm like,
John. Yeah.
I go, give me a name, John. Like, give me a name. And he can't give me a name. And now they signed Dalton Schultz and Singletary. And all of a sudden it's like, well, that was great. And I was like, okay, that was all it took. Like, do you see any, like, what would be your criticism of Nick Caserio? We'll go outside of the last 10 days and we can do that. But let's just talk about the last 10 days since legal tampering began. What is your criticism of Nick Caserio?
That he hasn't signed a guy to a 3-year deal, and that's about it. Like, that's it, because every move I've liked so far. And I think that's kind of the big thing. But at the same time, the thing is that I just wish you had a long-term deal. And it came to my attention today when I was going through Twitter and kind of seeing some things. And then I remembered that you have to think about what San Francisco did for a while. And that wasn't these short-term deals, but what they did was they always allowed free agents to walk. And why was that? Because they want the compensation picks. So when you get these guys on 1-year deals, you're going to play the compensation game. And I think that that's really beneficial, especially in better draft classes. I mean, I can tell you right now, I didn't like this free agent class at all. I thought that there was maybe two or three. There was like 2 or 3 great guys. It was Javon Hargrave, it was Deron Payne, and I thought was probably Jesse Bates. And that was it. And one of them was franchise tagged. One of them was never coming to Houston. And the second one, you would have had to pay $60 million to bring in. And I don't think he was going to come here unless anything less than a 4-year deal. So that wasn't going to happen either. So you didn't do anything that I thought was really terrible. And the free agents that you got are beneficial. I mean, Dalton Schultz was a supreme tight end and a security blanket for Dak Prescott the last 3 years. He had 17 touchdowns, and he was a guy that you really wanted to target on third down.
20 if you count playoffs, and that's how many the Texans had the last 3 years with all their tight ends.
So you add that, that's huge, and that was really beneficial.
Too. I also like that it was an adjustment to the market. It wasn't like we got to have this guy. It was an adjustment to the market. I think that because I'm assuming that those guys, I think it would be hard pressed. Like of all the positions, it would be hard for me to imagine they didn't watch this tight end class and kind of get a little bit excited and say, damn, those 2 third-round picks, we trade up to 2, or if we trade back in, like that was an adjustment to the market. They worked him out 5 years ago, 5 years ago, and then they ended up going with Akins, who was 5 years older, and they went 39 picks later or whatever it was.
Something like that.
An adjustment to the market. I like the Schultz. I like the Schultz a lot.
The only thing that I will say is that this is a really good tight end class. Like I really
good one, especially top 5. Who's your number one?
It's Luke Musgraves from Oregon State, actually. I love his film. I think that he is a dude. I think that he is everything that you're looking for. He's a lot like Dallas Goedert, the way that he plays. He's a decent inline blocker. He's a good route runner. He got hurt at the end of the year. At the start of the year. So you really got to watch his tape from 2020 and 2021. But I think Darnell Washington's good. I think Michael Mayer's really good. I think Dalton Kincaid's really good. I really like Zach Kuntz from Old Dominion. He had a freaking clinic down in Indianapolis. So, that's a guy that you target on day 3. But at the same time, go ahead and get yourself a tight end that's a proven commodity and really good on third down situations, especially for a young quarterback. And if he's really successful and he works in this offense, sign him to a long-term deal. Sign him to a 2-year deal, 3-year deal. And I think he would take it, especially because he really likes the state of Texas from people that I spoke to in Dallas. They thought that he was going to be in Dallas for the remainder of his career because if he likes the city of Dallas and he likes the state of Texas. So if that works out, that works out. I think Devin Singletary is a really good move because he was a starter in Buffalo. He averaged over 800 yards the last 2 years. He averaged 4.5 yards per carry during his time there. He's a good little like short yardage situation guy on pass catching down. So that benefits you, but you don't need to overspend at the running back position because you have Dameon Pierce and you want to get him as many reps as possible. I thought that bringing in Robert Woods was good for the style of offense that you're going to run because he is physical and he is a guy. And then I think the other thing is that Noah Brown's another one. Like everyone talked about Noah Brown just being a blocker. And like that's what you need for a Kyle Shanahan, Bobby Slowick type offense.
Think Jennings in San Fran.
Exactly.
Like that. Like the mop-up guy, take advantage of your opportunities when you get them, but be sure to do the dirty work.
And then also make sure that you are playing to the end of the whistle. And that's one thing that everyone says about Robert Woods is that he plays the end of the whistle. And same thing with a guy like Noah Brown. The only thing is, again, like if there was a conversation about maybe getting a younger linebacker like Azeez Al-Shakir from San Francisco that knows the defense, and he decides, oh, I'm going to go to this other team versus come to here versus you not offering him a contract, that's a different stipulation. But they address linebacker. They address defensive back. They address defensive line with two guys, one of which played in San Francisco and one of which played in a very similar defense underneath Robert Saleh in New York. They addressed the offensive line, interior. They upgraded there. They added in a complimentary running back. They added in a guy who can be a security blanket at tight end. So you add all these moves, and the biggest thing is that if you also have the opportunity to re-sign them, you have a crap load of money in salary cap next year to where they will benefit from wanting to come back because of the culture. And if not, you're going to walk away with compensation picks, which is something that every single year you look at the list, San Francisco's got like 9. Like that's what San Francisco does. So I understand the moves. I also understand the aggressiveness. As of today, with Denzel Perryman coming in, I give it an A-. I really do. I think that they've done a lot of good moves, a lot of cost-affordable moves. And the other thing is that Nick Caserio's swinging for middle-tier guys now. He's not swinging for bottom of the barrel. He's getting playmakers who have worked, who have been successful, and probably still have a good 2 or 3 years left in the tank.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I think you can throw in the coaching thing, regardless of how much help he got. I think you can throw that in there. Like, as far as like overall criticism, like if I was criticizing Nick Caserio, and I did this week, I called him dumb. I think that the Brandon Cooks handling, no matter how you look at it, even if you take his word for it and say, okay, you couldn't have reached the deal, he shouldn't have been active the final few weeks.
No,
and I said that in the moment. That would be my criticism. I think, and I don't know if this is going to be a thing moving forward. I like churning the bottom of the roster. And once you get 1 year of looking at Britt and looking at Kamu Grugier-Hill and looking at Rex Burkhead, bringing those guys back to me or Christian Kirksey, even like, it just kind of seems like, I mean, why? Like you can just try to see if maybe someone else comes through. That would be that. But the other thing is it's so fluid, like the Caserio thing, to where I don't know him right now. Like I can't tell you what Nick Caserio, his tendency is. I can't tell you what Nick Caserio is. I feel like we're learning about Nick Caserio as this thing moves forward, because last year you had the $75 million dead cap. This is the first offseason where you haven't had the Deshaun Watson situation. You got a coach that you believe in, not like a stopgap. The place seems more appealing. So like significant criticism, maybe I could say I wanted a center, but the 2 centers that were the best on the market, they stayed home and signed
all 3 really, because you keep
all 3 too. Yeah. So I don't like they couldn't get a center. Okay. Like I'm not going to like, I don't know what we do this. A lot of people do this. And I think you probably do this and I do this too, but like naturally where you're like, damn, that guy signed a 1 year, $9 million deal. I would have done that. And it's like, well, it's not Madden where you can just like put it like 9.5. And again, I'm not separating myself. I do it, but it's like, oh, damn, 9.5. We could have gotten that. And you probably couldn't have, but you just assume that. Like you see what Brindle and Bradbury signed for, and you're like, they could have done that. But
well, I mean, Nick would sign Brendel for 4 years. Like, that's the thing. Like, we've never seen him give out a 3-year deal past a punter and Cam Johnston. So, like, that was one that's like, okay, nope, that's not happening. But the only move that I think that, like, I was completely floored with, where I was like, how do you not offer a 2-year deal, or how do you not consider bringing him in on a 1-year deal and just match the offer, give a little bit more, was Azeez Al-Shakir. His film was phenomenal, and he was arguably the best LB3 in the NFL last year. Like, part of the reason why they're so stacked in San Francisco was because of if they want to take Fred Warner out, they had a really good option behind him. If they want to take Dre Greenlaw out, they had a really good option behind him. And I think that would have benefited a guy like Christian Harris to kind of learn that style of defense very early on. But besides that, every other move, not really that surprising. What I can remember, though, is last year when we were at the press conference for the Deshaun Watson situation, Nick said, we're not going to be spenders this offseason. We're not going to go out. We're not going to make a lot of moves. We're not going to be big. Next year, we're going to be a little bit more aggressive. And to his credit, they have been. They have been aggressive. They have brought in better players. They have brought in proven commodities, from Jimmy Ward to Shaq Mason to Dalton Schultz to Devin Singletary. They brought in players. I agree with you 100% on the Brandon Cooks thing. There was a deal in place for potentially a 2nd and 4th round pick from Dallas, and now you walk away with the 5th and a compensation 6. Like that's a 6-time 1,000-yard receiver. Like that's not what you should be getting on that market.
Don't play him. Like you don't. We don't have to sit here and say, well, they like this quarterback and figure out, like, just don't play him.
Yeah,
people get tired of me talking about it, but I mean it's relevant.
Well, like think about this for a second. You don't play him. The offer still probably doesn't sit as a 2 and a 4, but it sits as a 3.
What if he turns the well?
But it sits as a 3. Like it stays in a proper value, and you're still a team that needs really long-term needs too. Like that's the thing. You could go ahead and benefit from having 3 third-round picks, or having 2 first-round picks. Use one of those third-round picks to trade up into the 2nd and get a receiver or an interior offensive lineman or something like that, and that's going to benefit you. Or you can go ahead and use those picks to trade back and garner more draft capital over time. So it's like, I get where you're coming from on that one. And that is one I completely agree with you with. But the negative connotation, like I know I saw this in the comments earlier. Chad Forbes, great guy on Twitter. Like if you haven't seen him, just wonderful personality. I don't understand where, you're complaining, because they are getting middle tier guys with proven reps. I mean, Denzel Perryman was a Pro Bowler 2 years ago. Corey Littleton was an All-Pro in a defense that went to the Super Bowl. Jimmy Ward knows this style of defense. Sheldon Rankins knows this style of defense. Hassan Ridgeway knows this style of defense. And if all these guys want to leave in free agency, you get compensation picks. And those picks can be utilized to move up in the draft, move down in the draft, get more players to where you can get more kind of upside potential. There's not a lose-lose situation here when you get these 1-year deals. Schultz is the only one that right now I'd be like, okay, offer him a 2-year deal, just because of you don't know what you're going to do with tight end if you don't target one. But besides that, every move so far has been fine. Like after today, bringing in Denzel Perryman, who I really, really do like for playing opposite of a guy like Christian Harris.
Would have been 5th on the team in tackles last year in 12 games.
And the crazy thing is, he finished with what, 80 something tackles last year?
I think 83 something. Yeah. It would have been 5th, just right behind Desmond King.
And so that's the thing. It's like he would have had more, because of you're not going to have your safeties getting 100+ tackles every year. That number would have changed. So it's like you would have benefited from that. But after making that move to pair him along with Christian Harris for the long run, I give it an A-. I think that the only thing that I would have done was extend Dalton Schultz a 2-year deal, because I just feel like in this year's tight end class, you might as well have a guy that you're going to have for 2 years versus a 1 year in a tight end class that I don't really like in 2024.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, who knows what happens with Dalton? Dalton might get franchise tag next year for all we know. I mean, it could be a whole seesaw. The Forbes thing's interesting, because I actually I'm going to put a video out tomorrow. Forbes is a BOB guy. So like, it's actually kind of creepy when you go back and look at it. Like he quoted a friend of Bill O'Brien's wife in 2013.
I think I saw you post this on Twitter.
Back in the Penn State days. And in the last year, he has pushed for O'Brien to get the Jets job, the Giants job, or last couple of years, and Jaguars job. He's talked about how methodical his offense is. Like, I don't know how he knows BOB, but somehow he knows BOB. So it would be understanding that he would not give the guy who inherited the BOB mess the benefit of the doubt, which is cool. It's fine. We all have our guy that we're never going to give up on. I mean, we all have our friends. Yes,
that's fair.
It happens. Mine right now is Bryce Young.
Mine right now is probably not Nick Sirianni, Jonathan Gannon. I really like Jonathan Gannon. I thought he was a good coordinator.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. He's getting really crapped on right now around the world.
I think that he's going to be fine in Arizona. I think that this year he's going to suck, but I think in the next 3 years he'll be fine. Like Dan Campbell's another one that I was really high on. I'm like, okay, let him suck for a year, and I promise you'll benefit from it in the long run. So
let's see what happens there. There you go. So those are your guys. I was talking about your questions. Cole Thompson with us. Follow him at Mr. Cole Thompson. He does his thing. He's on the beat daily, asking the questions. We were doing like question role play the other day on In the Loop, and I did a Berman. And then I did a Berman, I did a McLean, and then I did a Cole Thompson. And my Cole Thompson was like, I threw out a crazy stat. I was like, he's always got to come with the information. He's always got to flex the sports dong when he asked the question. I said something like about indoor throwing percentage or something like that. I was like, yeah, I remember that you always come with the information with the questions.
Frank Ross, I think, loves me because of I mentioned win percentage
Frank Ross,
we talk
big
about
friend
punting.
of the show. Love Frank Ross.
When we were talking about him at Soldier Field, I asked him about, because he had punted there before. What is the win trajectory like in early September? And he started laughing. I was like, oh, okay, this is fun. So I always have just like that one random thing.
No, it's good, man. Cause it's, there's not enough. And I know this is crazy to say, but it's kind of a damn shame. Sometimes like in this business, there's not enough like sports fans, dude. Like I know that sounds crazy, but like, I don't know if it just beats people down. I don't know if it's just like something, but like, sometimes there's guys that just like, you can tell that you really like sports. And that's why like the times that I've hung out with you and you can just tell that you're really enjoying it. So I love it. You sent me 6 questions and I just want to go through the 6 questions. Let's go with Cole question number 1. Should they trade down at 12? That was one question that you sent me. My question is this: should they trade up? At what point would you think about trading up? So let's discuss that. And what name should we be looking at? My guy, he was in action today, Jaxon Smith-Njigba. I want Jaxon Smith-Njigba badly. That is my guy. What do you think they should do at number 12? What do you think the strategy should be?
Of the two, I would say if you have to trade up, I would say trade down if you don't like any of the talents that are available. And like, that's the big thing. And I've been
Don't you think they wanted Jameson last year?
I think 100%. If he was at 13, he would have.
I think they wanted Jameson, and I do wonder, like, if they're sitting there at 12 and they like another receiver, knowing now, what happened last year and the fact that they like Jameson Williams, I do wonder if that gets them a little bit more aggressive at 12.
I honestly think that if he was at 13, they wouldn't have traded with Philadelphia. He would have been in Houston last year, and they would have said, "We'll figure it out. Like, we'll make it work for a season." So that's my thing, but. Like I've said this before, I think that there's a couple of premier talents in this year's draft, and then it's a bunch of guys that are just going to be role players and have potential and upside, to where I don't see a problem if you're not getting your guy at 12 trade down, because I do like a lot of the talents that are more so around pick 19 or pick 22 or pick 23 versus than I do at pick number 12.
Are we talking receivers, or are we just talking
just players in general? Just player in general. But
how important is the receiver?
I don't like the receiver class, dude. And I've been like team.
You don't like Addison. You don't like Flowers.
Not at 12. Not at 12. At
what about 33?
Oh, 100%. If Jordan Addison's there at 33, take him. If Zay Flowers is there at 29, trade up from 33 and take him. Like, do something like that. I'd be fine with it. But 12 is too rich. But if there was a name that was going to fall down draft boards, Tyree Wilson is the guy from Texas Tech. That is the guy that I would target and try and move up to go get. I feel like
see him falling. I talked about that.
I don't.
I was with Stu. I look, of all the wild scenarios, and something's going to happen in the draft. It would surprise me, but I would not like just completely be shocked if, say, Tyree Wilson went ahead of Will Anderson. I know
it shouldn't shock you.
But
no, it shouldn't.
It would not I'm sure the internet would go nuts and people would start, you start shuffling. We've been watching the draft for decades now. You get excited, but it would not like sit here and like, it would be normal to me after like 2 minutes. I would be like, oh, damn. And then boom.
It's normal to me now. I mean, we're a month away and it's normal to me now. I've talked to people who literally have said the exact same thing, is that, oh, don't be shocked if Arizona goes after Tyree Wilson and Will Anderson falls to pick number 5 and just in Seattle's lap. Like, they really like Tyree Wilson's film. And I think that that's a big possibility for him. I don't think cornerback right now is the biggest pressing need. If you want to go ahead and not worry about cornerback, then yeah, go ahead and try and get Christian Gonzalez. I think that he's the best cornerback in this year's class. If not, I think that there's not really a need now at interior offensive line. Peter Skoronski is my top offensive lineman in this year's class from Northwestern. But I think that you're fine with Kenyon Green for at least another year.
How early you go in center?
Oh, if possible, if there's any rumor of John Michael Schmitz from Minnesota getting at the end of round 1, I trade up into the end of round 1 to get him. And I do what the Jets did. I do exactly what the Jets did last year.
Well, and I mean, I think you kind of compare it to the Cowboys. It was kind of controversial. I think in Dallas, they wanted Sharif Floyd.
The Travis Frederick year.
They traded up for Travis Frederick, and you had your center for damn near a decade. Injuries kind of cut it short, but you had an all-pro center, and you went up and got the best center, and not sexy, but very necessary. If you can go up there and get your Travis Frederick at the end of the first round, you got it for 5 years, and it's important.
5 all-pro years too, which was huge. So I would rather do that, but that's the thing, is that Tyree Wilson's the guy. I mean, if you really want to get aggressive, trade up and go get Will Anderson. Give up a first-round pick next year and trade up and go get Will Anderson and pair him as the guy that you want to be as your leader of the defense for the long run. And it's going to cost you a first-round pick, but if you don't feel like there's a pass rusher next year that can make the same impact, whether that be in free agency, whether that be in the draft, whether that
playing
be
chess. I'm a big fan of playing chess in the draft.
Why not? I mean, in my opinion, why not? Because if you have this draft capital for the next 2 years, why not use it for your benefactor? And also, that's a big thing, is that it's another Alabama guy. It's a guy that I think DeMeco Ryans would covet. I think it's somebody that they would believe has the potential. I've watched his film for the last 3 years, and I'm an Alabama grad, and I'm not being biased here. He is the most complete player in this year's draft. Top to bottom, he is the most complete player. And I think that his potential is skyrocket all-pro. So Jalen Carter's a name that I know a lot of people are going to say because of the draft stock falling. I don't think he can come to Houston. I would not touch him right now with the new regime. I feel like that Detroit makes a lot of sense, and I feel like that a team in the teens trading up makes a lot of sense with more of a rich, established culture that's going to allow him to prosper and do all that. That would be my thing. But if you want to get aggressive, trade up and go get Will Anderson.
Assets, though, and personality kind of make it to where you could look at a guy like Carter maybe a little bit more like he's, he loves hard and coaches harder. Couldn't you make a case that maybe DeMeco would be the right guy for him?
I would be fine with it. I just don't know if the organization would want to do it. That's my thing. Now, if they're all on board, he's the number 2 player in this year's draft. And there's a little bit of a separation between him and Will Anderson. But it's not as if that you don't need a need at interior defensive line. This was the team last year that ranked dead last in missed tackles at the line of scrimmage and most yards after contact. You need to upgrade at the defensive line spot, especially interiorly. And you did so with Hassan Ridgeway, and you did so with Sheldon Rankins, to where if there's the maturity aspect thing, you wouldn't have to play Carter right away. But I just feel like that you address the need right now to where I wouldn't be shocked if you want to go add more. But you still need a long-term pass rusher because Jonathan Grenard's going into a contract year. Jerry Hughes was phenomenal last year.
He gave you everything he could, but he's
34.
Father time. Yeah, father time.
He's 34. You can't expect that again. And you lose Obo, and you bring in Chase Winovich, which, basically on paper could be a lateral move. I consider it as of now a down move, but it doesn't mean it could be that bad to where, I think that if you're going to go target a guy, go get a pass rusher. I think that right now, the 2 that I would go after would be Tyree Wilson, should he fall, to pick number 8. I'd make a phone call to Atlanta right then and there and be willing to offer 33 and a couple of extra picks. Go get him. And if somehow Will Anderson were to fall, I'd do whatever I can to go get him. But outside of that, I'd rather move down. That's just my personal belief because of a guy I really like that is starting to lose a little bit of traction based off of conversations is Miles Murphy out of Clemson. And that is a really good pass rusher that I think can come in and learn underneath Jerry Hughes, learn underneath Jonathan Grenard. And I don't think you have to take him at 12. I think you can be smart, get an extra 3rd round pick, take him at, say, 18 or 19. He'll be available, and he'll be able to be your rotational guy for the first season. And he comes from a target and from a defense to where he was recruited by Brent Venables. Like Brent Venables doesn't go after slouches at defensive end. He goes after, I know, I'm sorry. I know. He's a dude that knows how to play the game, and he's a guy that's physical. I don't think that guys like BJ Ojulari fit the defense that you want to run. I think Nolan Smith is a good pass rusher. I would take him very much closer towards 19 or 20 than I would at 12. Same thing with Lucas Van Ness from Iowa. But like, that's what I would do, is that if there's an opportunity for you to trade down, I like the pass rushers and the receivers that would potentially be available at 19 through 23, then overreach and take them at 12. So if you're going to trade up, go after a Tyree Wilson, go after a Jalen Carter, go after a Will Anderson, and be willing to get aggressive. But if you're not doing that, that's why I say trade down. Unless you're staying at 12 and take a Jaxon Smith-Njigba, which is 100% what I would do.
The wide receivers. How mid is this wide receiver class? Cole, question number 2. And what do you think of Quentin Johnston? I'm not high on Quentin Johnston.
I think that he is a boomer bust type guy. And I mean a very big boomer bust type guy. He can work in some offenses. I think that there's that physicality that you really like at 6'4". I think he's a good route runner, not a great route runner. I think he's got good hands, not great hands. I like his potential, but I just don't see him as a number 1. And like, I do a top 150 players in the draft every single year. I release about a month before the draft, and I go through and I list off positive traits, negative traits. I have one receiver in the first round grade, and it's Jaxon Smith-Njigba, and I'm going to have to move him up. Like, he came in my board this morning at 19. That's going to change. He's going to be probably around 14 or 15 in terms of prospect. He's that damn good. And
I've heard people that don't have any wide receiver first round grades.
But like Jalen Hyatt, no, I'm not taking him in the first round. I see Will Fuller boomer bust potential. Jordan Addison, you love his route running, but he is a little bit slower. So that kind of does bother me. I look at a guy like Cedric Tillman. I think that he is a phenomenal physical type guy. I'm not taking him around 1. I'm taking him around 3. I love Marvin Mims from Oklahoma. I think Marvin Mims is a phenomenal receiver, and he has tremendous value on day 2, not on day 1. I think that when you look at guys like even players as Zay Flowers, there's conversations that even though he had incredible production on the outside at Boston College, they're going to say that he has to play inside in the NFL. And I think that you have your inside guy in John Mechie. So it's a bunch of number 2s. Like, this is the draft class where if you have a bona fide number 1 receiver in the building, go get yourself a complimentary piece. Like, Minnesota should be salivating right now that they're at pick number 23, and you have like Zay Flowers and Jordan Addison and Quentin Johnston to pair with Justin Jefferson. Like, they should be on cloud 9 because of that potential. But in Houston, you don't have that number 1 right now, or at least on paper, you don't have that number 1 because you have no idea what Mechie's going to be.
You don't have the number 1.
Yeah, you don't. I'm playing something. You don't have the number 1. I'm not gonna try and sugarcoat it. Robert Woods has always been a better number 2. I think that Noah Brown's probably a number 4. I really do like complementary receivers, but you're going to get that in round 2, round 3, round 4, round 6. So why reach on a wide receiver at 12 if it's not Jaxon Smith-Njigba, who, again, by the way, I'm tired of hearing this. The guy is such a good route runner. He can develop on the outside. Like, the guy can play
I just had this discussion. This pisses me off more than anything. Because
it's so annoying.
Here's the thing. Look, he's elite in the slot. If you have Marvin Harrison Jr., you have Garrett Wilson, and you have Chris Olave, and they can line up on the outside at a first-round level, why in the hell are you going to move him around? Like, it's not like he was at Texas or somewhere else where they don't have wide receiver depth, and you weren't lining him up on the outside. You had guys that were elite at lining up on the outside, and he's elite at lining up in the slot. Like, you even go back to his high school and stuff, like he's running fades and he's just completely mossing kids. I know it's high school, but that's what he's doing. The reason that he wasn't doing it is not because he can't. It's because he did not need to.
And
he didn't need to.
And like, the crazy thing was last year led Ohio State in receptions, led Ohio State in receiving yards, finished second in yards after the catch. Oh, and by the way, this was with 2 first-round picks last year that went for over 1,000 yards.
Better than them. Both say he's better than them.
Like, it's incredible. Like, I don't know where this whole conversation of only a slot guy. Okay, perfect example.
And I don't care if he's only a slot guy. I don't mind having multiple slot guys. If you got to figure it out, I don't care.
My thing is try Mechie on the outside. See if it works. I don't think it will, but see if it does. Like, My big thing is that Jordan Addison, if you go back and watch his Pitt tape, he played 78% of his reps inside the slot at Pitt for Kenny Pickett. When he went to USC, they flipped it. He played 78 of his reps on the outside. Why did they do that? Because they needed an outside wide receiver. They needed somebody who could be a great route runner in a very limited route tree in a very dynamic offense that didn't have an outside receiver. Where at Pitt, they needed Kenny Pickett to go ahead and target him as much in the slot. So I don't know where this repertoire is of him only being a slot guy. You know who else was a slot guy in college? Justin Jefferson. And Justin Jefferson plays everywhere for Minnesota. So like, that's the guy at 12 if he's available. If he's available at 12 and you want to go ahead and take him, do that. But I don't see much of a separation with guys between Zay Flowers, Cedric Tillman, Jalen Hyatt, Jordan Addison, Quentin Johnston, and you add all that together, and one of them you're seeing get mocked every single week at pick number 12. You're going to have one of them available at 33. I don't know if you're going to have that same pass rusher available at 33, or you're going to have that same type of interior offensive lineman if you didn't bring in Shaq Mason at 33. So, like, don't reach for a wide receiver at 12 or at 19 when there's other needs that you have to address, and there's not a number one in this year's class. It's very much mid in terms of upside potential number ones. But I do like this class if you're looking for a number two. And, like, that's the big thing is that if you need a complimentary receiver, this is the year to go do it. But this isn't it for the Texans. Like, it's Jaxon Smith-Njigba round 1, or do not touch a wide receiver round 1. Don't.
All right. Now, Cole, question number 3. What position value after free agency? What position value are we looking at after free agency?
It's center. I mean, to me, it's center. Like, you have to get a center to come in. You can't have Scott Questenberry next year be your go-to guy at week 1. You can't have Jimmy Morrissey be your go-to guy at week 1. Let them battle it out for the depth purposes, but you need to bring in a center. The good news is that I love John Michael Schmitz. I absolutely love John Michael Schmitz coming out of Minnesota. And Big Ten football, they breed interior offensive linemen. So I think that that's a really good thing because the other two guys that you can like is Joe Tripman from Wisconsin and Luke Weipler from Ohio State, which are really, really, really good players, and they could be available at the start of round 3. I feel like of the 3, John Michael Schmitz is a day 1 starter. Tripman is probably a high end, by the end of the day 1 starter, to where like I maybe wouldn't draft him right now at like 33, but I think I would play him by like week 4, week 5, and that'd be beneficial. The other need is edge. I just look at this edge class, and it's very, very, very good. I don't know if it's elite after Will Anderson and Tyree Wilson, but it's very, very, very good. I like Miles Murphy from Clemson. I like Lucas Van Ness from Iowa. I like Felix Anduki-Uzomah from Kansas State. If anybody follows me on Twitter, you know my infatuation with Felix Anduki-Uzomah. I think that he is arguably one of the best pass rushers in the Big 12. I know that there's a lot of people in the Big 12 that did not like him, and that Jalen Ford got screwed out of the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. But I think that he's phenomenal. I like the depth in this year's class, but I still feel like you have to address the position because you were bottom 10 in pressures last year. You were middle of the pack in terms of sacks. I feel like that right now you have to be able to bring in somebody who can learn underneath both Grenard and Hughes because both are in expiring contract years. One's 34 years old, and you can't expect him to have the exact same type of production they did last year. You're also hoping that you're going to get the same type of production of 2021 with the likes of Jonathan Grenard, and then that's going to either lead to the franchise tag or it's going to lead to you watching him leave in free agency on a massive deal. So I feel like you have to go ahead and get in a pass rusher just for the likes of being able to have that guy in the building. And it doesn't matter if he plays 35% of reps right now or 39% of reps or say 42%. If he's starting to slowly take over as the guy and you get him on a 5th-year option deal, it benefits you. It truly benefits you. And if it doesn't, then what you do is you go get him really early round 2 because I like the other positions. Like Jimmy Ward was a good signing. I won't call it a great signing because the biggest thing with him, it's the injury concern. He's been injured throughout his entire 9 years of his career. So I do feel like you have to address safety at some point. But this is a good safety class. It's not a great one, but I like Jordan Battle from Alabama. I love Sidney Brown's athleticism from Illinois. I think that I'm blanking on how to say his name. Jahir Brown from Penn State's a really good one as well. They have Antonio Johnson from Texas A&M that could be made available. Like, you can target somebody, but you also don't need to reach for it. Same thing with tight end. This is a very good tight end class to where Zach Kuntz is going to be available in the 4th round, and he may have just as much value as a guy you take round 1. Or a Luke Musgraves could be available in round 2. I don't think you need to take him in round 2 anymore because of Dalton Schultz, but you can like it. I think the running back class is very, very good. I think it's very talented on day 3. Tajay Spears from Tulane is a really good pass catching back. Deuce Vaughn is a guy that is probably going to be your scat back type dude, but I want him on my team just to prosper. So, like, those position values don't really matter. To me, you got to get a receiver at some point, but I don't think you need to overreach. The two that I think that you need to really target outside of quarterback is interior offensive line, and you have to get a pass rusher just because of you have 2 guys in expiring contracts, and you don't know if they're going to be back next year, and you also don't know if they're ever going to be as productive as they were in 2021 and 2022.
Any free agent possibilities left? Cole, question number 4. Free agents. You already said it was a meh free agent class. We're 10 days in now, and it's kind of it's been depleted significantly. I kind of look at this as like the secondary market where maybe guys get cut closer to camp. But at this point, as far as just like available free agents, nothing really sticks out to me.
The only guy, it's one. It's DJ Chark from Detroit. Like, if you don't love this wide receiver class, which I don't, but I think that there's value in this wide receiver class for number 2s, go get DJ Chark. Because DJ Chark has been a proven commodity. DJ Chark has been a guy that has had 1,000 yards in Jacksonville. He's a guy that can take the top off of defenses and play that exact same type of role that Brandon Cooks was supposed to be. He's got better speed. He comes in with more so of a value of a 55 to 75 catches per season. I think that there's a role for him. And I think the problem is that you look at the receiver market, there's not a lot of names out there right now. And also, I don't think that there's a lot of value. I mean, like, what you have, Mecole Hardman signed for a 1-year deal for $4 million. So he's going to come cheap. And I don't think that he'll probably go to Houston. Personally, I think that he'll go to Carolina, because Carolina, I think, really needs to get another outside receiver to pair with Adam Thielen and Terrace Marshall Jr. But, like, I would say right now, DJ Chark is the only other guy. Besides that, wait until after free agency. Like, you didn't go get Jerry Hughes until after the draft. So, like, you can still get guys after the draft, and which is why, like, you can wait.
You can tweak, figure it out. Patrick wants you to say Bobby Wagner. I just don't see why Bobby Wagner would end up here.
Well, at this point, I think it's off the table because you bring in Denzel Perryman and Corey Littleton. So I don't think you're going to get another linebacker, especially when this is a pretty decent linebacker class. Like, DeMarvion Overshown is going to go probably somewhere in round 3, early round 4, and he could be a starter by midseason. I really like Dalion Henley from Washington State. He's kind of come on very strong in my evaluation. I like Drew Sanders from Arkansas. He had a really crappy combine, which means that he's going to probably slip down the draft board. So you don't need to bring in more veterans when there's still good young names that could develop over time.
Cole, question 5. What are the top 3 needs as we sit right now? Well, we'll just get center out of the way. Is it center, wide receiver, and
can we not have quarterback because that's a given?
Yeah, QB doesn't count. So center, wide receiver, edge is kind of seems to be the theme here.
It's that easy. I mean, you can work for a year with Devin Singletary. I think that he's actually going to really benefit from being a part of this offense because of he's a guy that you want as your number 2, not as your number 1. I think that there's good receivers in this year's draft. I think there's one great receiver in Jaxon Smith-Njigba. I think that you can find value. I have mentioned it. The 2 guys that I really do like is Cedric Tillman from Tennessee. I like him at the end of round 2, early round 3, and Marvin Mims from Oklahoma. I think that when you look at like a Jordan Addison and a Marvin Mims
doesn't transfer, then we're talking about an All-American, and we're probably talking about a guy who's looked at, it's highly regarded, probably like a top 5 pick or top 5 wide receiver.
well, consensus top 5 wide receiver.
Yeah,
does he slip into the end of first round conversation? Like
Maybe.
that's the kind of guy that you're talking about. So I think that that's great value too. And then center. I mean, again, I don't need to waste a lot of time on this one. It's Scott Quessenberry and it's Jimmy Morrissey. It's Scott Quessenberry and it's Jimmy Morrissey. Moving on.
Are you Bryce or bust? Final question. This has been the question of the offseason. Bryce or bust?
I'm not.
Seem like you're okay with CJ, though. You're all right with CJ.
I'm all right with CJ. I'm 100% all right with CJ. Now, don't get me wrong. I think that Bryce is going to be the guy at the end of the day. I think Bryce is going to be in Houston. And I think that Bryce, because of the offensive line, because of the moves that you made in free agency, the security blanket of getting a Dalton Schultz, having a veteran receiver in Robert Woods, having another running back to take pressure off of a guy in Dameon Pierce, getting better and extending your quarterback, your left tackle and Laramie Tunsil is huge. I think that it will work out, but I don't think that at this point you need to be like, nope, we got to go ahead and get up to number 1 because they love Bryce Young in Carolina. Like if CJ falls to you, this was a guy that had literally the highest completion percentage in the history of Ohio State football. He had over 8,100 passing yards. Not to mention he had over 40 plus touchdowns both years. Last season, he led college football in the likes of passing. In passer rating, he had the highest QBR rating in college football last year, to where he has the size as well. And I know that everyone's going to talk about the whole, oh, he's not mobile enough. He's too mechanic. If the offense is anything like Kyle Shanahan, you want the mechanics. Like you want the guy that's just going to go, yes, sir, quick, move the ball down the field, not worry about any of those kind of things, to where I'm fine with it. Like if this is the offense you want to adapt and this is the offense you want to run, go ahead and get a guy like CJ Stroud. But I do think it is Bryce Young because I think CJ's going off the board at number 1 to Carolina. I just don't see a way where you send your director of scouting, where you send your director of player personnel, where you send your director of of everything, your GM, your owner, your owner's wife, your offense coordinator, your quarterback coach. Like you're telling
We're
everything.
eating dinner with Bryce now, though.
But is everyone there? Like is literally the entire same group there?
According to Breer, they are. Breer
Okay,
just tweeted it. It's recent. According to Breer, they are. And it happened like real quick. If you go look at Breer's timeline.
I saw that, but I haven't checked if it was the if they put on the what's it called? Like
this is the thing I hate more than anything. And I appreciate you for coming through, Cole. Big fan of what you're doing. Everybody follow him at Mr. Cole Thompson. This mindset, name one OSU QB that's been decent in the NFL, drives me nuts. Does Joe Burrow count? I know he didn't go to Ohio State, but like before that, it was name one LSU quarterback. And when Patrick Mahomes was out, it was name one Texas Tech quarterback. And before that, it was Aaron Rodgers, name one Jeff Tedford quarterback that can do this, and name one Alabama like I don't like that simplistic line of thinking. I know eventually that like does Ohio State make it easy for their quarterback sometimes? Sure. But like this simp line of thinking, name one of these, like those myths get squashed every year.
Dude, okay. Like finding a franchise quarterback is like finding a hay piece in a needle stack. And no, I did not separate that or mix it up. I'm being like dead honest. You're going to get poked and prodded and pricked apart until you find that piece. Like you're going to go through a crap load of bad picks and a lot of bad quarterback play that's never going to pan out. So you have to just continue to dig until you find your guy. And that's kind of the case. Yeah.
That's what I said. 3 out of 14. Like if you go through the quarterbacks taken in the top 5 since Andrew Luck, 3 out of 14, you can maybe say are franchise guys. And that's Burrow, Lawrence, and maybe Kyler Murray. That's it. Because Herbert was taken in the 6.
Oh, okay. 4. I was just saying.
Yeah. Herbert was taken number 6, but top 5, maybe 3 out of 14.
I think that because of the offense Tua's in, if he was able to stay healthy, I'd put him in there, but he can't stay healthy. So I'm not even going to try that one. But yeah, I would say probably 2. I would say 2 right now because I'm not sure with Kyler and his attitude that he's going to be the long-term guy in Arizona, but he does have the skills to be a franchise guy. Yeah, I would say so. But it's that easy. Like you're going to miss. And if you look back at the history of the draft, one guy is going to be a stud. One guy is going to be a middle tier type quarterback. And you're going to have another guy that's going to be a boomer bust for a few seasons, and one's going to suck. Like that's every single year. You see it happen. Like Paxton Lynch was god awful. Carson Wentz was middle tier. And then you have kind of that wishy-washy Jared Goff type stuff. So it's like, it happens every year. You got to be able just to figure out what you like in a quarterback. It's why it's the hardest thing to figure out. Like, Josh Allen didn't have any bit of weapons that you saw in Ohio State or Alabama. He was throwing to lawyers and to freaking farmers and to bull riders. Like, that's what he was doing in Laramie, Wyoming. And they found a way just to develop him based off a skill set. So if you like the skill set of a player, make it work. Like, that's how you got to do it. That's how you find your guy. And I think that both Bryce and I think CJ have the entire skills of what you're looking for in a franchise quarterback. And again, if Bryce Young is 6'1", if he's Baker Mayfield's height, like, we're not talking about him being number 2. We're talking about him going number 1.
Yeah,
so like, that's the entire point. But again, I feel confident either way with either quarterback coming into Houston. I think both are plug and play ready made. I think both have enough production, and I think both really would fit for Bobby Slowick.
Cole, appreciate you, my friend. I know you're getting ready for your show as well. I appreciate you for hopping on. Keep doing your thing. Keep spreading that knowledge. I know this is your favorite time of the year. We're 5 weeks and a day away, and then that's when the real fun begins, my friend.
Absolutely. If you want to give me a follow at Mr. Cole Thompson on Twitter, I would love to be able to connect with you guys. And Landry, I appreciate you bringing me on, man. And I'm really happy that you're bringing in the locker room. You've done a great job with the show.
There you go. My guy, Cole Thompson. All right there. Follow him at Mr. Cole Thompson. He's got that knowledge, man. He has the board and he comes with the information, and I much appreciate it. I think you should appreciate it as well. I love the new life on the beat. It's really, really fun. So support all those guys, the young life, the guys that are there every day, whether it's Bieniemy, Alexander, Cabina, Cole. Those are a couple of my favorites. And if I left anyone out, just consume as much Texans information as possible. It's getting a lot more fun to consume. I think the rough days are behind us. And no matter what does happen, remember, when it comes to this Texans stuff, we are all in this together. A couple videos coming out. Manana. Appreciate you guys for coming through.